Hi, I'm Boris Blade. I'm the host of Strange But Harmless. I'm really good at pinball. I should be. My dad taught me at an early age. The first pinball machine I remember playing was in the vestibule of an old Miracle Mart store. I'd stand on a wooden crate or a chair and still had to stretch to see the playing field. Next, though, was the one at the local Kroger. Also, I think Zaire had a pinball machine. My dad would give me a quarter and stand next to the machine kibitzing, remarking on my use of the flippers. Dad loved pinball. He taught me to not always wait until the ball gets to the flipper to hit it, that you get different angles on the ball depending on the distance from the flipper when you activate it. He would point out the best targets to hit and try to help me get the angles right. Pinball is a real game of skill if you break it down to its fundamentals. I cringe when I see someone just hitting the flipper buttons randomly as the ball bounces around the play field. Maybe that has something to do with my OCD. Dad also taught me about nudging, or shaking the machine as you novices would call it. There's a very thick line between shaking a machine and a finely timed and measured nudge. The proof is, I constantly nudge and rarely tilt. For those of you not familiar with pinball machines, they have a small pendulum inside with a metal circle around them. When you shake the machine too much, the pendulum touches the circle and the machine shuts down and you lose that ball. The summer after my sophomore year of high school, I worked for Junior Achievement. Most people don't even know they have a summer program. We worked in an old building that later became a Halloween haunted house. We rebuilt wooden pallets and chemically peeled rubber off of metal tire beads that wouldn't pass muster at the Firestone factory. We got paid $30 a week. What does this have to do with pinball, you might ask? Well, that whole summer, every Sunday after church, my best church friend and I would go to Aladdin's Castle at the local mall. It was the only arcade in the area at the time. We would have his older brother drop us off behind the mall. We'd go into the bakery next to the arcade, and I'd buy us a fresh baked loaf of cinnamon bread with raisins and 2 little bottles of milk. We would sit on the steps behind the mall and have breakfast while we waited for the arcade to open. Then we would go in and blow most of that week's pay on games. I could play pinball all afternoon, and a lot of times we did. I joined the Air Force National Guard right out of high school. I went to basic training in January of '79. 3.5 months later, I graduated from security police training. I was sick as a dog, hungover. The night before, I had drank 4 quadruple shots of 151 rum straight within 15 minutes and chased them with big glasses of screwdriver. I was hammered. It was our graduation celebration, and I was going home the next day, or so I thought. Due to a screw up with my tickets, I had to spend the day and night in the San Antonio airport waiting for my departure. I was too sick to enjoy a day in San Antonio, so I just crashed on a bench in the servicemen's lounge. It was just a big waiting area. Well, that evening, after sleeping all day, I had sobered up and was wide awake. The only thing I had going for me, yeah, you guessed it, a small glass room with 2 pinball machines and a change machine in it. They were Playboy and Matahari. I played them both all night on $1 each. I played Playboy first. The first game was to learn the play field. Then I loaded the other 3 games and went to town. I kept getting free games and eventually turned it over. By then, I had racked up another 40 free games on it. Then I got bored and switched to Matahari. I did the same thing on it, eventually turning it over and racking up over 50 free games. During the night, other servicemen would come in and I'd tell them to jump on whichever machine I wasn't currently playing. It was a long but fun night. Have I mentioned I love pinball? I remember after Dad died, I still played. By then, no store had them out front. It was either a bar, and I was only 20, or an arcade. Luckily, by then, more arcades had opened in the area. One opened down by the old Burger King in town. I remember walking in one cold November day and seeing a pinball machine called the Black Knight. It cost 50 cents a game, and you only got 3 balls per game. I almost walked right back out the door. But then I looked closer at the game. It had 2 playing fields, an upper and a lower, each with its own flippers. There was a place on the top level to line up 5 balls. Just then the machine said, "Play 5 balls." And I thought, I don't mind if I do. I put my 2 quarters in, which was not easy for me. I think it was the first time I ever paid more than a quarter for a game of pinball, and I wasn't happy about it. What cinched it for me was seeing these red arrows pointing to the sides that read Magna Save. I looked down and there were 2 extra flipper buttons. I was intrigued. Well, that first 50 cents went real fast, learning the gameplay and testing the flipper action. I was not happy about it, but the Magna Save was really cool. and I went and got change for $2 more and fired up all 4 players. Buddy, let me tell you, all of Dad's lessons kicked in that day. I kicked that machine's royal ass. I made it sing. I kept lining up 5 balls above and sending them into play all at once. Player 2 took early dominance on score, but player 1 was not far behind. The other 2 were not so great, but decent enough. I turned the machine over. When I finished those 4 games, I had at least 20 free games lined up. It was like I was channeling the pinball wizard or something. When I got bored of playing, I went to the counter and told the guy, "Hey, I beat your machine." He gave me a t-shirt and shook his head and said, "Yeah, I just paid $25,000 each for them." You see, there were 2 of them sitting next to each other. A couple years later, when my niece was born, while my sister was in labor, my brother-in-law, another good friend of ours, and myself went down to a local bar. We drank beers and played pinball. I turned that machine over too. The barmaid gave me a free shot. I asked for mezcal, and it was the last shot in the bottle, and I got the worm. My brother-in-law dared me to eat it. Of course I did. I believe that was the first time of many times that I ate the worm. Maybe not. They couldn't believe I could do it, turn over the machine, that is. They used to tell me I was full of shit about the airport story until that night. The machine was Mata Hari, and I beat it on my first quarter. A few years later, my brother-in-law introduced me to a place called the Dragon's Nest downtown, in the same block as the police station. We went to play pool. I returned to play pinball and practice pool. It was always dead in there, and there was never waiting on the tables, either type. Then one year for Christmas, my loving wife bought me my very own pinball machine. It was Secret Service. Boy, was it a great machine. I used to have people over for pinball parties. Of course, no one beat me on that machine. I could make it sing whenever I wanted. I turned it over so many times it was ridiculous. I hated to sell it, but eventually I had to. We were moving out of our mobile home, and I didn't want to tackle getting it out of there. Well, some of my favorite machines, not ranked in any order, were the Black Knight, Triple Action, Spinball, Abracadabra, Mata Hari, 8-Ball Deluxe, Playboy, and Pinbot. But truth be told, I like the Nintendo version of Pinbot better. Pinball was always my first choice at the arcades, but I also played quite a bit of video games. Back then, there were no home video game systems, at least not until the early 70s with the introduction of Pong, the tennis-type game that started the whole video game industry. I have an episode coming up about it, and video games in general. Watch for it. But I have to say that some of the digital pinball machines on the home gaming systems were cool as hell. I already mentioned Pinbot. That was a remake of an actual game, but the digital could do so much more. The graphics and gameplay were both engaging and captivating at the same time. There were so many to choose from, I won't even try to list any of them. Every game system had their own pinball games. You could sit and play for hours. They were a lot of fun, but nothing beats the feel of the metal, the touch of the plastic flipper buttons, the flashing lights in your face, the sound of the bumpers mixed with the background music blaring in your ear, seeing the red free ball light come on when you're on your last ball and you're so close to a free game you can taste it, the feeling of accomplishment when you hear that loud noise indicating the free game was won, even though you have a pocket full of quarters. Another thing Dad taught me was kindness. Sometimes a kid would be hanging on the side of the machine, mesmerized, watching with eyes glued to the metal ball flying around. You get so caught up in their fascination that you screw up your own game. You drop another quarter in the slot and say, "Do you want to give it a try?" handing over the machine to someone who may well never have played before. Back then, you could show kindness to a child without issues. But that's a thought for another episode. Or maybe not. Well, I'm Boris Blade, and as always, I'm strange but harmless.